Everybody and their dog makes a small portable RGB light these days, so when a company I'd never heard of reached out asking if I'd be interested in trying theirs, well, I wasn't. Having never heard of Weeylite before, my attitude changed pretty quickly when I realized that their parent company is the far more recognizable Viltrox, who are probably best known for making an insanely wide variety of affordable lens adapters, focal reducers, and more. Today we're seeing if this new addition to their lighting lineup is any good. And I'll tell you right now, we're in for a really wild ride with this one. Full disclosure, these lights were sent to me by Weeylite, but they are not paying me for this video. They are not seeing this video before it goes up, and all opinions here are my own. The K21 is an 11.5-inch LED tube with full RGB control and built-in effects. By this point, those specs are extremely common for portable lights like this, but there's some pretty major surprises the deeper we dig, especially once we get into the smartphone app. The light comes with several modes. You have a basic color temperature or CCT mode, a full color mode using HSL, and a second full color mode that actually uses RGBYW to dial in the different colored LEDs individually, and finally an effects mode. The CCT mode has a Kelvin range of 2500 all the way up to 8500 Kelvin, and the ability to adjust the green and magenta shift as well. This is perfect for working with multiple light fixtures, because if one of them has a bit of a green or magenta tint to it, you can match that on the K21, and then when you go to do your color correcting, you can get rid of that tint evenly across all the light fixtures. The HSL mode has a wide range of colors to choose from, letting you adjust hue, saturation, and luminance as the name suggests. But one thing that was a little bit odd, however, is the K21 actually arranges these settings as luminance, hue, and then saturation, with an L next to the saturation number just to make it slightly more confusing. The first nice surprise that we encounter is this secondary RGB mode. If you prefer a color mixing approach, you can use the RGBYW mode to adjust the intensity of each color of LEDs independently. It is awesome that we have dedicated white and yellow LEDs within the fixture, because this means we can get a true white instead of a close approximation by trying to mix red, green, and blue evenly. This gives us a better quality of white light, and it makes sure that our colors are going to be that much more accurate within our image. Lastly, we have an effects mode, which gives us 26 different preset lighting gags or programs to choose from, including all the basics like hue cycle, fire, and broken bulb effects, as well as some less common ones that I haven't seen much of, like a welding torch and multiple fireworks patterns. The vast majority of these effects are great and very usable, but there's a couple that are rough. Specifically, the yellow-green tint of the fire and candle settings make those ones a hard pass for me. Effects is one of the main reasons why I keep one of these lights on me for every single shoot that I do. The ability to create more dynamic lighting setups for music videos is essential. Now I could go out and buy something super fancy and expensive that does all kinds of customizable effects, or I could just get something like this that covers 90% of that for a fraction of the price. Here's an example from a recent shoot where I needed some flashing lights for a more intense section of a song. I had my Amaran 200D pointing to the ceiling to flash the room brighter, but I needed something else directly on the talent. It was super easy to just take two of these, put them on either side of the band without any rigging or light stands involved, and set them both to a flash effect. I was even able to set them to 2 different speeds to get a more unique look. This is one thing I haven't seen at this price point, is the ability to adjust the effects without having to connect to a smartphone app. The only other light that I know of that does this is the Falcon Eyes F7 Mark II, but that comes in at more than double the price. That's it for all the basic modes of the K21, but there's some extra little hidden features in the smartphone app, which we'll get to a bit later. The build quality on this is actually really good. It's certainly not as tough as it possibly could be, but it is really far from being a weak or cheap design. It doesn't give or creak when you try to bend it, and all the parts seem to be fitted together extremely tightly, which is always a good sign. There are certainly some plastic parts on here, like these end caps, but the body itself is quite strong with a metal housing. And the upside to the odd plastic part is that this product is very light, significantly lighter than my other portable RGB light, the Falcon Eyes F7 Mark I. The end caps also have a really nice design touch with rubberized ends where your 1/4 20 mounting screw goes, which will prevent the light from getting scratched up over time, but it also creates a tighter connection. The mounting threads give you the option to put them on a tripod or even put 2 of them on a friction arm and pretend you're freaking Darth Maul like I did for the next 20 minutes after discovering this. I've been using these on my shoots for the past month, and despite being thrown around in luggage bags and banging up against other equipment, I see very little signs of wear except for maybe some scuffs on the end caps. To me, that's a very good sign for durability. When you combine that lightweight construction with the very strong magnets embedded inside, you can mount the K21 in a lot of very specific places. If we take something rectangular like my Falcon Eyes F7, it works great on a flat surface, but doesn't mount well on anything with a slight curve to it. The K21, on the other hand, works much better because of its much lighter weight and slimmer profile. This means you can even toss it onto a C-stand or a boom arm and it'll lock into place with a very secure connection. This light design also made it easy to mount them on non-metal surfaces. Here I've got a recent music video project where all I did to mount them was use a couple strips of gaff tape on the wall, and they stayed there for hours on end. The battery is going to last you 1 hour on full brightness, which is surprisingly bright for the size, but you also have the ability to plug in a portable battery with USB-C to extend that life even further. The downside here is that they put the charging port on the back, so if it's mounted somewhere, you can't easily access it if that back is covered. It would have been a better solution to put the charging port on one of the ends of the light just to eliminate that issue, similar to what we see here with my Pavo tube. Many of these budget tubes have really poor diffusion where you can actually see through it and see all the individual LEDs inside. Godox and the original Pavo tubes come to mind as some of the worst offenders of that. Weeylite have done a great job here of solving that issue by using a well-made diffusion layer that hides all the individual LEDs very well. To be completely honest, I've had these for weeks, and I noticed just yesterday that under certain lighting conditions and very specific settings, you can see the individual LEDs, but when I tried to document that for this review, I just couldn't get it to show up on camera no matter how hard I tried. In my opinion, all that matters is how it looks on camera, so well done to Weeylite on the diffusion. The user interface is very straightforward and logical. You've got 4 buttons. One changes the mode, the other cycles through the settings you can adjust, and then a plus and minus button for making those adjustments. It's very easy to just pick up and go thanks to the simplicity, but there are a couple rough edges about the user interface. You can tap these buttons to adjust settings in single increments or hold to adjust quickly in larger jumps. But when you press hold, it takes a little bit too long to start moving. It's just long enough that I start to question whether or not I press the button properly before it starts working. Minor annoyance, but you should probably cut the length of time in half or even down to a third just to get it on par with what the general standard seems to be. The other thing I noticed is that if you make an adjustment to something like the saturation, then walk away for a bit and come back, when you press the plus or minus adjustments, they're not going to do saturation anymore. They always default back to brightness. I found this a little bit frustrating because I like to dial in a look, go check it on camera, and come back and make any tweaks. So the fact that it always defaults back to brightness, even if I'm adjusting something else, just means the whole process takes a little bit more time than it should. I don't necessarily count this as a strike against the light because I could see how once you do dial it in, if you go back and make some adjustments, it's probably just going to be to brightness, and you don't want to accidentally change the color that you meticulously dialed in. Fair enough, it's just not the way that I prefer to work. I've got one last complaint about the user interface, and that's that the battery indicator acts a little bit funny. When I turned the light on and had it at a lower brightness setting, it showed that I have 3 bars of battery left. And then as I up the intensity to 100%, it actually changes to show that I now have 4 bars of battery life, which is obviously wrong. Even if this issue wasn't present, I would much prefer to see a more precise indicator of how long I have left before the battery runs out. Something like we see on Asteras or the new Pavo tubes with an hour and minute readout. It's more practical, and more importantly, it's going to help me plan out my shots a lot easier when I know the exact amount of time I have left on a charge. All the issues I've mentioned up to this point are pretty minor, and they could be fixed with a firmware update. In fact, these lights are on firmware version 1.1, so they've clearly done that already, but I don't see anywhere on their website that indicates any sort of download or support page for the K21, so I don't know if these issues will ever be fixed. Now, I mentioned before there's some pretty cool surprises to this light, but they're not in the light itself. They're extended functionality you can get from the smartphone app. Kind of. On the Amazon listing, it says to download the free Weeylite app from the App Store, but when you get your light, the instructions that come with it say to download the Weeylite Pro app. The Weeylite app certainly controls the light just fine and does everything you need it to. But if you use the Pro version, which is also free, you get a couple extra features, a color picker mode and a gel mode. Neither of these features are advertised anywhere on their website or on the Amazon listing, and while it may be because the apps are both a little bit unpolished in their current state, I would think the gel mode at least is worth advertising. As of now, you have access to about 40 different gels from Lee and Roscoe, which is a small fraction of what they offer, but still covers most of the popular gel colors. You also have a switch here that lets you flick back and forth between whatever you have your CCT mode set to and the gel you selected. I'm not entirely sure what purpose that serves, but I still like added functionality regardless. As for the color picker, it works if you're willing to be a little bit patient with it. It doesn't seem to save the color that you selected for more than a second or two, so you gotta quickly back out of that screen in order to make sure it doesn't change colors the minute you move your marker. It also doesn't help that the marker itself is not centered properly, so you actually need to aim slightly below the color you're trying to capture. It does work, it just might take a couple tries, and it could be easier in some circumstances to just manually dial in the color yourself. The app also doesn't require you to create an account and sign in before you use the lights, which on one hand is good, and on another hand is not good. Realistically, the chances that someone nearby knows you're using the K21s and is going to download the app just to mess with your lights is pretty ridiculously slim, but you should still have this basic security feature that literally every other app has. Now, this is a lot of information, so let's just get straight to the point. Is it a good light? Despite being far from perfect, I actually really like these lights. And that's because I've been using them on set for the last month and haven't run into any of these issues becoming a problem. All of these flaws are nothing to do with the core functionality of the light that I actually use on a daily basis. The K21 has everything that I really want in a portable light. It has great output, it has really good color rendering, it has RGB, it has effects, it has wireless operation, and it does all of those things really well. The one thing I still don't know is whether or not I'd recommend this over Nanlight's PavoTube 2.6C. Nanlight's equivalent pocket light is essentially the same product, but it's slightly better in nearly every way. It's a little bit lighter, better effects, more polished app, faster charging. However, it's also $30 more expensive for those improvements. That's a 50% increase in price compared to the K21. Now, Weeylite currently only make this 1 foot length, so if you want the absolute best-in-class 1 foot tube light, or you want to be able to buy different lengths of tubes and control everything with a single app, then I recommend you buy into Nanlight's ecosystem. However, if price is an important factor to you, then I say get the K21 because you're saving $30 and the sacrifices you're making are negligible, which I think is really impressive and a testament to what Weeylite have done here. I'd really like to see Weeylite fix the remaining issues because it really wouldn't take much work to take this from a great light to a fantastic light. A little more work on the app and a firmware update would go a very long way, but for what it's worth, these have replaced my original Falcon Eyes F7 as my go-to pocket lights. So tell me what you think. Are you gonna pick up one of these? And if not, let me know why and what you would get instead. If you found this helpful, please subscribe to the channel for more stuff like this. You can follow me on Instagram if that's something that you're into. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.